should we move to the last questions? That is about who is going to pay.
It seems that 32% of all countries should be committed. If you look at the world, sort of the African results at least, and that's quite a lot coming from the African participants in this exercise. That they're saying that everyone should actually be paying.
Yeah.
It's maybe not quite fair according to what I would say, but at least it shows a great level of willingness to participate in this.
Yeah.
But look at a country like Malawi. They have responsible for 0.00 something of the global emissions. So it's not much use that they feel committed to doing this. It's not very fair either.
Yeah, but the financial crisis and the huge increase in unemployment and the fact has changed the whole way that governments are responding to the climate crisis, because there's now an urgent need to pull up employment. All the green policies, the stimuli that governments have announced, and therefore I suspect what's happening is that people are saying, yes, get on with it, do more of it, even though we recognise we're going to have to pay more, but we think we'll benefit from the policies reducing unemployment and getting the world back on its financial feet again.
Yeah, it might be so, but and it could also be a question of a fair share. I mean, Malawi is not supposed to pay a very high, but maybe a very small contribution compared with, for instance, Germany or other of the big polluters in Europe or United States.
But look at the effects. It's not going to benefit anyone, actually, as long as they're not polluting. So it's not. I don't see the point. And I think it's very important that new development in Malawi is carbon free, etc. But it's really diverting the debate from the central points to discuss whether Malawi should pollute less or not, because that's not where the pollution is. We have to go to America, to Denmark, to the rich countries.
Of course, yes. Yes, absolutely right.
And it could be a question of a fair share and a fair contribution to the needed development on the world perspective.
But if a developing country wants to sacrifice, that's up to them, surely. If Malawi says it wants to burn fewer fossil fuels, surely that's up to Malawi to say that.
Mm-hmm. But are you talking about the home fires burning in the small huts along the Malawi lake, or what?
Well, that would be good. But, I mean, if they were converted to, some kind of heat storage from the sun in the summer, then that would be good.
Probably good.
The interesting thing in the answer is that a lot of developing countries also want to contribute to even though it might be a small amount.
Yes. It's good.
Maybe, Stine, do you think that this might mean that these countries just want to be part of the deal? They want to be with everybody in the general market, and if they contribute something, they benefit more or something?
That could be an explanation. I happen to think that the people who are answering this are not sort of the 90% of the population who are probably living at less than $1 a day or something like that. Then it's not really for them to say, well, we are willing to contribute. I think it would be fairly unjust. If I should say something, I would suggest that we stick to the a reduction of the commitment to pay that would be equivalent to $20 per day per person, which means that anybody polluting and earning more than that would be part of paying that. And that's in order to make sure that people could have a decent life and not maintaining this very, very unjust balance that we see today. We're talking about people starving.
Yes. Well, as was mentioned at the beginning, this isn't the people who are answering the survey do. I'm not quite sure how well stratified it was in terms of how unbiased it is, and it could be the most. Those who are most enthusiastic about doing something about mitigation are influencing the results of the survey. And so we do get this a problem then, interpreting the results of the survey.
Just to tell you how people were selected, in each country, the 100 citizens were chosen to reflect the demographic diversity in that country or in that region according to especially 4 parameters: age, gender, occupation, and education. Additionally, also geographical zone to reflect the distribution between countryside and cities. And in some countries, especially some of the African, also according to tribal affinities and so on, where that may be politically relevant. So according to these criteria, the people were selected.
Yeah, but still it can be difficult because people that aren't interested in climate change could say they weren't going to participate, and so you still end up with a bias even though you've stratified the sample. This is not easy to remove these kind of biases.
No, of course. You may find that the people who show up are people who tend to agree that something should happen to climate change, but that's one opinion. In our experience, though, in similar processes, the people who object to an issue also are very tempted to show up for these proceedings. For example, when it concerns environment, nature, and so on. We had debates in Denmark about nature parks, and the opposition turned up very strongly. It seems that there's a clear pattern that low-income countries are willing both to pay more than the rich countries think they should pay. They're also willing to reduce more than rich countries think that they should reduce emissions.
Well, there's one obvious explanation that ties in with what we know already, that countries and people who are more dependent on the climate, because they're subsistence farmers or they rely very heavily on crops, and that's true of many developing countries, that it means much more to them, and therefore they're willing to make more sacrifices, and they obviously also think that if they make sacrifices, they think it might work the other way, and this might encourage the developing countries, the developed countries, to do more. I mean, in other words, the developed countries are being shamed into action by the developing countries, some of them saying, we're going to do something, we have to do something, even though we know it might not have much effect. I mean, this is human nature. This is how we work together socially in persuading other people to do something when we think it's a very serious problem.
Well, I have seen people in areas where they had a famine and a really, really serious crisis going, who were ashamed that they had gone to the woods to chop firewood. That was not legal to do, and they knew that it was destroying their local environment. But I mean, they had to survive. And then we're telling them that they also have to feel guilty about it. And that's where I think there is a need to say this willingness to sacrifice should also have a certain limit. It's very good to shame people into doing something. I just happen to not have very much belief in the fact that our governments would sacrifice very much, for instance, the next victory at the parliament elections in order to not be ashamed by the Malawian peasant.